Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be giving you a review for The Suicide Squad. Of course, this is James Gunn's brand new film. I've been so excited for this, by far one of my favorite movies of this year. I'm going to do a tiny little non-spoiler section in the beginning just in case you haven't seen it yet and you just want to hear my thoughts on it. But I will be going into spoilers right after that, and we will be talking about a lot of things here because there's a lot of spoilerly type things that happen in this movie, obviously, because a lot of people die. That's just how the movie is. So right off the bat, just a spoiler-free review. The movie's really good. It's a really solid movie. I don't think it's as good as the reviews have been saying, because people have been calling it one of the best comic book movies of all time, one of the best DC movies. I think it's definitely within like the top, maybe top 10 DC movies of all time. I mean, there's only been like, what, 50, 40 maybe DC movies. So it's not like, you know, it's a crazy spot for it, but it's still really solid. I would give it at least above an 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5 out of 10, maybe even a little bit higher than that, because it's got a lot of great stuff to it. There is some negatives that I will get into, and some of my negatives might be positives for some people. It really depends on your preferences. It's all up to opinion. But as a whole, this movie has a lot of great action, a lot of great comedy, a lot of great character moments, and a lot of great character building, even though a lot of those characters die regardless. A lot of great music. It's got a really solid soundtrack. In terms of the directing and the shots that this movie is able to produce, it's a beautiful movie. There are so many angles and different, like, just shots that are presented that are just so well done. The movie's really brutal and gory. I think we all knew that from the Red Band trailer, but it definitely does not have any shortage of crazy gore. In terms of the negatives, a lot of my negatives are spoilerly, so I don't want to get into it just yet. You're gonna have to just see it for yourself, but there's a few things that I'm a little iffy on and I feel like they could have done better or different with, but at the same time I understand why they went with the things that they did, the things that I'm not very happy about, which kind of has to do with some of the deaths of a lot of the characters. There's a lot of characters that die in certain circumstances where I feel like they could have done something with them before killing them off, but rather they kind of just did it, and I'm kind of felt like it was just for the sake of kind of subverting our expectations and kind of making it shocking rather than making it actually impactful. But it's still really cool and really well done, even with that being said, because I know that's kind of the whole point. It's supposed to be shocking. It's supposed to be like a holy shit moment, because the movie has that style. It has James Gunn's style to it, very Guardians of the Galaxy like, but not really, because Guardians of the Galaxy is another type of style. This is much more mature. It's obviously, I mean, it's rated R, so obviously it's going to be mature. But then some of the comedy also feels a little bit, well, not mature, but it's like, it's mature, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like, it's got that, you know, dick jokes and such, but they're not necessarily something that I feel like most 18-plus-year-olds would necessarily laugh at. Funny on the first time, but after you've seen it again and again in the trailer, you don't laugh at it as much anymore. But there's also a lot of comedy that is hilarious, and the stuff does land, which is fantastic. So it's really all I can say, to be honest. I just want to get into the spoiler stuff, so let's just hop into that. Holy shit, that beginning. That beginning was mayhem. Now, that is an issue that I had, though, because, yes, I was really excited to see a lot of these actors. I was excited to see Pete Davidson, Michael Rooker, and they die within the first 2 minutes. Now, that's not me saying it's, you know, a big issue with the movie just because my favorite actors died. That's not the issue I have. But the issue I have is that they advertised a lot of these people. Yes, they said don't get too attached, but it's impossible to get attached to them before even seeing them do anything. You know what I mean? They didn't really give them any moments. They didn't really give them anything to do. Michael Rooker did absolutely nothing. You had the one guy, what was he, like the detachable guy or whatever, the detachable kid was his name. He had a cool little moment there, a funny moment. Really, he didn't do anything cool. He just did something funny with his arms detached, and it was hilarious, funny moment. But they didn't do anything with him other than that. I kind of wish that they had these characters just kind of die throughout the film, but give them moments before they die, so at least I can care when they die. Rather, it was just a kind of a funny moment more than anything, which it shouldn't have been funny because they were getting destroyed. But it's a fucked up movie, so it's kind of funny in the way they do it. it's dark humor, very dark humor movie, and that's my type of humor, so I was definitely laughing even when these people were just getting killed in the most gruesome ways possible. But even characters like Captain Boomerang, which we saw a lot in the first Suicide Squad, that wasn't going to be a funny moment to me, even though the whole scene was kind of funny. So it was definitely kind of odd how they did that in the beginning, although the scene was really well done, and I loved it. I loved it, but I didn't. Like, it's such a weird thing to me, how I was just like, I want to see more of those characters, but it's still so funny how they did it and so well done, how they shot everything. But at the same time, I'm like, I kind of wish they gave a little bit more moments to them. Regardless, as I said before, the movie has a lot of incredible shots, especially as it gets into the later parts of the film. We're going to kind of just go piece by piece through the movie and just kind of break it down. So obviously you have that beginning scene, and then after it does that, it cuts back 3 days earlier, which I really liked how they did this out of chronological storytelling. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. This is a case where I think it really did work, and I was really excited maybe we would see more of Pete Davidson and Michael Rooker from 3 days earlier, but no, they just kind of go to the other team that was going to a different part of the island. And again, I wish I saw more of some of those characters, but I guess they died, so it didn't really matter regardless. They just kind of had 1 or 2 moments with them there, and it was whatever. Throwaway. Then they get to this island and we meet the main crew. And now the main crew is made up of Bloodsport, Polka Dot Man, Harley. Well, Harley was with Ricky Flag on the other crew, but they eventually come to the main crew. Obviously, you have Ratcatcher, King Shark, Peacemaker. All of these characters are great. I really liked a lot of them. So obviously Bloodsport, I think, was probably the highlight of the movie, in my opinion. He's probably got the most moments, and he's got a really good story behind him. Of course, he's played by Idris Elba, who does a fantastic job in the role. I absolutely loved his character. Polka Dot Man was one I did not expect to like. I was kind of expecting him to be kind of just a throwaway character that's just kind of there doing nothing, but he actually had an interesting backstory where very briefly he mentions that his mom was like working for this, I don't know, corporation or whatever. I'm not too sure what exactly it was, some science lab, and did experiments on her own kids, and some of them died, or he said his siblings died, and he was one of them. He was an experiment because she wanted to create them as superheroes. She wanted to make them superheroes. And there's this really funny running gag throughout the movie where you have them, or her mom, his mom, appear in different places because he says that he sees his mom wherever he goes because he hates her a lot, and that's what he does. He pretends the people he's killing is his mom. It's a funny little gag that's running through the movie. You have a couple moments where he sees his mom in different places, and the mom's just like this. It's hilarious. It's funny. I do like those moments. I think Polka Dot Man was a good character, and I think they actually did a good job with his death as well. It was kind of a funny moment. It wasn't supposed to be. Again, the movie's got a lot of dark humor where he's just saying, I'm a fucking superhero, and just gets smushed. Funny. It was funny, but the character, you still felt like, oh shit, like he kind of cared for him a little bit there, and he just got smushed by a giant starfish. But that's kind of the ridiculousness of this movie, and the movie is ridiculous, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it being ridiculous because it's James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. I mean, come on, it gotta be a little ridiculous. Another thing with the gore was great, like I said from before, but yes, it was over the top in a lot of instances. Like, there's some instances where I'm like, that makes no realistic sense for that to happen, but I don't really care. It's a comic book movie, and again, it's James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, so you expect it to be kind of crazy and a little bit over the top. It's not so over the top to the point where it's like Kill Bill over the top gore, but it still is a bit over the top for what you'd expect from reality. And it definitely feels weird being in the DCEU, especially alongside movies like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, which are much more grounded and feel like, you know, they can exist in real life, where this is much crazier and over the top. So it's really odd how these movies coexist. I'd love to see these characters get it. Obviously, I don't expect to see you know, Henry Cavill. Fortunately, we're gonna see Ben Affleck again, of course, in The Flash, which is exciting, but it would be weird to see these characters interact with one another, especially Harley Quinn. We've only seen her obviously in Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey, which are two movies that are probably the ones that are most hated on from the DCEU, but this one has the similar tone to like Birds of Prey, for example, but in a completely different way that I feel like works a lot better than it did in Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad from 2016. Of course, we also have Harley Quinn returning. She was fantastic, as always. I can never get enough of Harley Quinn. I think Margot Robbie is basically, she is Harley Quinn. She was the perfect person to play Harley Quinn out of anyone I could have ever seen. I don't think she's as like fucked up as I feel like Harley Quinn should be in this movie. I definitely felt like she was more like that in like Suicide Squad from 2016 even. But even Birds of Prey kind of made her a little bit more like an anti-hero, and I guess that is what Harley Quinn is supposed to be in a lot of instances. She's not always this crazy villainous psychopath, but she doesn't have like any moments in this movie where she even feels like a villain. She feels like a good person for the majority of this movie. Like, she's just kind of nice and good. I don't know, it was weird to me. I didn't expect it. Very odd. I wasn't really against it because she's still really fun to watch. In that one scene where she was escaping the building from, you know, that the whole military or whatever, that was awesome. Just seeing her kick ass. She was great in Birds of Prey, kicking ass. So I was excited to see her here, and she did a great job in that scene. I was loving every bit of it. Then you have Ratcatcher, by far even more surprising than Polka Dot Man when it comes to her inclusion in the story. I was not expecting her to be a main character. I was not expecting her to live. I was not expecting to care about her, but I did. And she had one of the more interesting stories as well, because they all had little backstories that they kind of went over. And her backstory wasn't that in depth, but it was really good in the end, because she was essentially she stopped Starro. She was essentially the main hero at the end of the day. And she had all the rats come up and grab onto, you know, Starro and take him out. And I really like that moment where she's thinking back, she's kind of tearing up as she's thinking back to her father, and she was on this like ledge with her father, and her father said that the reason why she uses rats, why rats, you know, she kept bringing up why rats, or actually no, Bloodsport kept bringing up why rats, why you use rats, and she never answered it until her father answered it in this little flashback where the reason why he uses rats is because they're some of the most hated creatures in the universe, and if we give them a purpose, then we have to all have purpose. It's a beautiful message. I really like that. I don't know. It was a really good message. Beautifully done. And she's, of course, the one to stop Starro. And, of course, we also have King Shark. I think we all knew we were going to like watching him. He doesn't really have much of a backstory at all. They don't really give him one. They don't really need to, though, because he just has some really awesome moments where he eats people, rips people in half. And he has one funny scene where he's, like, looking at like the fish or whatever. He's like, oh, other dumb friends or whatever, like cute moments that, like, it's fun to watch him. And he's one of the only ones that survive. Only 4 of them survive, which is, again, surprising to me. I didn't expect that many people to die. And then Peacemaker. I'm all in for this TV show. I didn't really give a shit about the show before, but after watching this, I want to see it. I like John Cena already. I don't think he's a great actor or anything, but he's just fun to watch. He's a fun actor. So, like, I would never want to see him in, like, a serious role, but he's really fun to watch in, like, comedy roles of any sort. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching him in this movie. And even in some of the serious moments, I kind of thought he was doing a pretty good job. He's not really phoning it in here. He's doing a good job with this role. I'm actually excited to see that Peacemaker show, but when they killed him off, I got a little bit less excited because I was like, oh, the show's going to be a prequel, and I don't really care about prequel shows that much because you know he's going to die eventually. It's like, whatever. But then the after credits, he survived. Thank God. So that means the show is going to actually take place later. Hopefully it has something to do with what was going on here, because they gave him this interesting little story here, which I want to talk about this as well. Because the whole main plot of the story here is that Amanda Waller, because she's pretty evil, we all know that from Suicide Squad, her whole plan here was to destroy this building so it destroys the evidence that the American government had anything to do with this Project Starfish thing, right? Rather than actually trying to take out the starfish itself, because she didn't give a shit about what happened with the starfish. She didn't give a shit if it killed everyone in that entire area. She just wanted to get the information destroyed. And when they get there, obviously Thinker tells them all about what was going on there. Thinker's death was great, by the way. I just got to mention that. That was really cool when he was like being held up by the starfish and ripped his 2 arms, his arm and his leg, I think, were ripped off, and his other part of his body was splattered into the window. But Peacemaker was told by Amanda Waller to make sure, no matter what, that is destroyed, because she trusts him, because he has this ideology behind him, which I find to be kind of interesting. He's like, I'll do whatever it takes to keep peace, right? Even if that means, it's funny, he has like a line, he's like, I'll kill as many men, women, or children that I have to keep peace. It's a funny, contradiction that I think they play with a lot in this movie, and obviously that's the same thing here. He's okay with people not finding out about this, because he knows if they do, there's going to be mayhem. And obviously Ricky Flag's like, fuck that, bro. Like, I've been, part of the military. I did not, join it for this crap. So he's like, I'm going to tell them. And they get into this fight. And the fight between the two of them is pretty awesome. Unfortunately, Ricky Flag dies. This is going to go in my negatives, honestly. I really liked Ricky Flag in Suicide Squad, and I liked him in here, but I didn't love him in here. They didn't give him much. It's not because his character wasn't great, it's because they didn't give him much to do. Now, I know he's not really one of the main Suicide Squad members necessarily because he doesn't really have any powers. He's not like overly good in something. He's just a soldier he's a pretty good soldier. That's pretty much all he is. So I get why they didn't do much with him, but like, I like his character enough to the point where I wanted to see more, and I didn't really feel much of an emotional impact there because I didn't see much of him there. I felt the emotional impact from the point of view of Peacemaker because he just killed someone like just over this, shit, and he clearly was somewhat affected by that. But in terms of the character himself, Ricky Flag, I was like, we didn't really see much of him. I don't know. Again, it kind of goes back to what I said before. Some of the characters I wish got some more moments, but again, it's already a big-ass cast as is. I don't know how many more moments they could have added in. Maybe they could have cut some of the stuff in the middle with Harley Quinn and this president guy, which we'll talk about that next. I don't really have a big issue with that. It seems like a lot of people have an issue with that little plot. I think maybe it was too long. Maybe we didn't need that whole montage of them having like a date together or whatever, but I get why they had it there. It was important for Harley's character, and I like that she killed them. I thought she was going to do it, honestly. Yeah, it was completely not unpredictable at all, but I liked it. I liked how that all played out, and I just wish that maybe they could have cut some of that just to give maybe Ricky Flag a couple more moments, maybe even just dialogue. I don't need him to have a bunch of action moments necessarily, but just dialogue to kind of see where his character's at, see what he's up to. That's the only point in the story where they really gave him much of that, and I liked it. It's just I wish we got more before that as well. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the movie did have some political undertones, but not in an annoying way like a lot of movies do these days, where they kind of shove a message in your face and it's like, oh, agree with me, agree with me, agree with me. And that's not what this movie was doing at all, because it was a very bipartisan issue. I feel like it wasn't necessarily trying to lean you in one way. It was kind of giving the information towards you and being like, okay, this is an issue that I feel like a lot of people agree on. And this is in regards to everything that's happening there with Peacemaker and Ricky Flag, where he wants to obviously get that information that the American government was involved in what was going on with the Project Starfish. And I thought that was well done. I didn't think it was trying to force a message of like, oh, America bad or anything. It was like, oh no, the government has done shady things. Very realistic that this could happen. It's very realistic that people working for the government would want to try to hide that information. It's very realistic that people working as like, military soldier or whatever would try to, get that out there because they feel like, they've been working almost for this. So it's like you kind of have to, it's a lot of moral issues going on here. And I really like that, especially with these characters. And I thought it played out very nicely. It was definitely political, but it wasn't forcing a message in your face. You know what I mean? It was throwing one out there that was, again, bipartisan in a lot of different ways. So I appreciated that. Another thing I'd like to mention is the whole character, I guess not really character, creature, I guess, of Starro. There wasn't much there. There wasn't much depth to it, but I don't really care. Same way with Suicide Squad from 2016. You had Enchantress, right? And a lot of people said they didn't care about Enchantress as a villain. I didn't care that much either. I'm not really watching these movies for the villains necessarily, because the characters are already villains, and it's really about the Suicide Squad. That's all it is about, really. I feel like when you're watching a lot of other movies, superhero movies, it's very important, the villain. Very, very important. But this is kind of just a mission to get these characters to bond with each other and have good moments and such. And I don't necessarily feel like the villain matters that much. It was kind of a really cool villain, don't get me wrong. The story just wasn't all that interesting. But the design of the villain, I mean, the scenes where I'm going to call them face huggers just because they look like face huggers from Aliens, where the little starfishes come on, grab the peoples by the face just like the face huggers, and turn them into zombies essentially, was awesome, especially when they all came after Bloodsport and Bloodsport was slicing them up. Really cool scene, really well done, and again, I liked how they took out Starro in the end. I think the last thing I want to mention, the last thing I want to bring up, and it is a negative, is the whole thing with the fact that it wasn't really a Suicide Squad. It was kind of, they were all scattered for most of the film. Obviously, a lot of them in the beginning just died regardless. But even like Harley, she wasn't there for most of it. Ricky Flag wasn't necessarily there for most of it. They even split up the squad at the very end there. They were kind of just, split up. And then they had 4 of them meet up together in the end. and it felt like a lot of them didn't really get enough moments with one another. There was a couple characters that definitely had a lot of moments. Obviously, Bloodsport and Ratcatcher had a lot of moments. Polka Dot Man had a lot of moments with Ratcatcher as well. King Shark had like some moments with like Peacemaker and stuff. Peacemaker had a lot of moments with Bloodsport. Bloodsport was the one who basically was a connective tissue to everyone, honestly. Had like one moment with Harley at the end there, but it didn't feel like it did in the first film, where it was like everyone was together the whole film, where you had this connection and camaraderie between all of them. But this one, you didn't feel that camaraderie, I feel like, in the same way. And maybe you weren't supposed to, I don't know. I only felt that between, again, those couple main characters, especially the ones that survived till the end, as well as Polka Dot Man. And that's about it. There was really no camaraderie between a decent amount of them, because a lot of them either died early on or weren't really together with everyone for the whole movie. You know what I mean? So I think that's the issue I had there. And I think if they did make them together for a little bit more, I think I would have enjoyed the story between these characters a little bit more. As is, it is a fantastic movie. Definitely would give it at least an 8.5 or 9 out of 10, something in between there, because it is really solid. Probably within my top 3 favorite DCEU movies of all time. Definitely within my top 10 favorite DC movies. And in terms of comic book movies, it's probably somewhere in the top 20, 25, comfortably at somewhere in there. So yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.